Under the relentless blaze of Red Hollow's midday sun, dust danced like ephemeral ghosts along the cracked streets of the frontier town. In that charged moment, fate wove an unexpected tapestry, a tapestry that brought together a scarred, reclusive rancher and a silent, resilient woman discarded by her unworthy husband. The auction block, set up in a shabby wooden hall beneath a tattered canvas awning, hummed with an undercurrent of desperation and whispered rumors. The auctioneer's voice, rough as the gravel underfoot, called out not for cattle or land, but for the troubled soul who had found herself cast aside after a gambling debt ruined both her pride and her future. In that instant, as the gavel struck with resounding finality, it became clear to all present that this sale was not simply a transfer of ownership. It was the turning of a page in a story marred by betrayal and yearning for redemption. Every onlooker felt a shiver of premonition, as if the very air held its breath in anticipation. Here in Red Hollow, where fortunes rose and fell with the flick of a switch, destiny had chosen to play its hand in the most unlikely of ways. Elias Kane, a solitary figure shrouded in mystery and burdened by scars both seen and unseen, observed the proceedings from a distance. He was known throughout Red Hollow as a wealthy rancher with a reclusive nature, a man whose hardened exterior belied the turbulent past raging beneath his calm surface. Tales of a brutal conflict across blood-stained battlegrounds had left him with deep physical scars and emotional wounds that time had scarcely begun to mend. Always clad in a worn duster and a weathered hat pulled low over his eyes, Elias seldom sought the company of townsfolk, preferring instead the quiet solace of his sprawling ranch nestled among the rugged foothills. Yet on that fateful day, something stirred within him as he watched the auction unfold. It was not mere curiosity that pulled at his heart, but a recognition of a kindred spirit, an echo of his own pain and resilience. In Juniper, he perceived a silent strength that resonated with his own inner struggles. Despite the grim reputation that preceded him, Elias felt an inexplicable empathy for the woman who had been so unjustly cast aside. He recalled his own battles, the nights spent haunted by memories of bloodshed and loss, and felt that perhaps in saving her, he might begin to mend the fractures within his own soul. His gaze, as steady as the ancient oaks lining the ranch, held an unspoken promise of protection and an invitation to rebuild what had long been broken. Juniper stood apart from the crowd, a wraith of sorrow and defiance, her eyes shimmering with the remnants of tears unspoken. Once, she had been a wife, cherished by dreams and promises, but her husband succumbing to the lure of gambling and treachery had stripped her of both love and dignity. Now, discarded like a broken tool, she awaited her fate with a silent grace that defied the cruelty around her. Her tattered dress, though faded, hinted at a former beauty now marred by hardship, and her hands trembled slightly as she clutched a worn shawl close to her heart, a keepsake of a life that had been stolen from her. As the bidding commenced, each raucous call and clinking coin echoed in her mind like a dirge for lost hopes. The atmosphere was thick with judgment and whispered disdain, yet amid it all, a quiet strength pulsed beneath her calm exterior. She made no protest, for silence was her only refuge in a world that had long forgotten to speak kindness. In that stark moment, as her fate was sealed by the final resounding bid, the weight of her past and the promise of an uncertain future collided within her. As the auctioneer's gavel fell one final time, sealing the transaction, an uneasy silence enveloped the room. All eyes turned toward Elias Kane as he strode forward with deliberate calm, his dark eyes fixed on Juniper not as a possession, but as a soul burdened with grief and hidden strength. His voice, low and resolute, broke through the charged silence as he quietly acknowledged the transfer. With measured steps, he extended a hand toward the woman still standing with a stoic demeanor, her gaze steady yet distant. In that brief, electric moment, the air seemed to tremble with the promise of change, a union forged in shared adversity. Whispers rippled among the onlookers, their expressions a blend of disapproval and reluctant hope, for few had witnessed a man of Elias's repute show compassion for someone so publicly scorned. In the exchange that followed, there was no need for words. The silence spoke volumes as Elias gently guided Juniper aside from the peering crowd. The way he carried her away, as though sheltering her from past wounds, ignited a spark of defiance against the cruel fate she had endured. Though her lips remained closed, in her eyes shone the glimmer of a new beginning, fragile, yet unmistakably real. As Elias and Juniper made their quiet exit from the center of the auction hall, the fading light of the late afternoon began to cast long, distorted shadows across the dusty streets of Red Hollow. Their figures receded into a narrow side alley, leaving behind murmurs of disbelief and speculation among the gathered crowd. Yet, amidst the dispersing throng, one figure remained, half hidden in the lingering gloom near the edge of the town. Perched atop a lean, tired stallion with a coat as dark as midnight, the mysterious rider observed the unfolding scene with an intensity that belied casual curiosity. His eyes, cold and calculating, flickered with a secret knowledge, and the slow, deliberate clink of spurs punctuated the hushed silence like the ticking of an ominous clock. The rider's presence exuded a sense of impending consequence, as if he carried with him the echoes of long-forgotten grievances and a promise of retribution that had not yet been satisfied. In the waning light, his silhouette merged with the swirling dust and fading hues of the old town, an enigmatic specter whose intentions remained shrouded in mystery. For those who looked closely, his stance suggested he was no mere bystander, but a harbinger of events that might soon upend the fragile balance of power in Red Hollow. What secrets did he harbor? To whom did his loyalty truly lie? As the last of the auction's commotion died away and night began to blanket the town, the rider's gaze never wavered. With a final, unreadable glance toward the direction Elias and Juniper had taken, he shifted slightly in his saddle, his mind clearly working on plans yet to be revealed. The stage was set, and the wheels of destiny had begun to turn, leaving every witness with the unsettling feeling that this was only the beginning of a much larger, more turbulent tale. Even as the rider's eyes glinted with a promise of reckoning, an eerie silence swept over the barren land. His solitary presence foretold storms yet to come, and his secret mission remained an enigma waiting to be revealed without warning indeed. The first light of dawn crept over Elias Kane's sprawling, neglected ranch, a once proud homestead now ravaged by time and neglect. The windswept plains and crumbling outbuildings testified to years of hardship and abandonment. Amid the peeling paint and splintered wood of the old barn, Juniper worked silently. Her hands, calloused yet tender, moved with deliberate precision as she repaired broken planks and hammered new nails into the faded timber. Each measured swing resonated with her quiet determination to restore not only the barn, but also pieces of a fractured past. The wind howled through the broken planks, carrying with it the scent of dust and memories long buried. Sunbeams filtered through the narrow gaps, illuminating dust motes that danced in the stale air. While the barn skeleton groaned under the strain of neglect, Juniper moved methodically from one task to another, patching holes in the sagging roof, replacing splintered boards, and carefully sanding down surfaces to awaken the hidden beauty beneath layers of decay. In her silence, she communicated strength and vulnerability in equal measure. Though few words passed her lips, every breath and measured movement spoke of a woman determined to forge hope amid despair. As she worked, a silent promise echoed in her heart that even in the harshest conditions, renewal was possible. After hours of labor amid the creaks and groans of the old structure, Juniper discovered something unexpected. Tucked behind a loose board in the far corner of the barn, partially concealed by cobwebs and dust, lay a small, ornate locket. Its delicate design contrasted sharply with the rough-hewn decay that surrounded it. With trembling hands, she retrieved the locket and held it close. The cool metal against her skin stirred echoes of a long-forgotten past, a past rooted in an orphanage where she had once found fragments of love and belonging. The locket, embossed with intricate filigree, contained a faded engraving that whispered secrets of a time when she had known care, even if only for a fleeting moment. The discovery ignited a spark of remembrance inside her, both painful and hopeful. In that moment, the locket became a symbol of her lost origins, a tangible connection to the fragments of identity scattered by years of abandonment and betrayal. With a bittersweet resolve, she slipped the locket beneath her dress, a hidden reminder that her past, while marred by neglect, had once held the promise of love and that the future might yet offer redemption. Later, as the midday sun climbed high above the hills, Elias Kane emerged onto the creaky wooden porch of his weathered ranch house. He surveyed his land with the careful scrutiny of a man who had borne many burdens. The silence around him resonated with memories of distant gunfire and the echo of orders given on blood-stained battlefields. The rancher's rugged face, lined with scars both visible and hidden, softened imperceptibly as his gaze fell upon Juniper, who was now seated on a worn stool near the barn. He motioned for her to join him on the porch, and together they sat in the quiet that only solitude and shared sorrow can invite. Elias began to speak in a low, measured tone, his voice carrying the weight of years spent in conflict. He recounted fragmented memories of a war that had ravaged more than just the land. It had scarred souls and stolen dreams. In the silence of this broken land, I found a reason to stand, he murmured, his eyes glistening briefly with the pain of loss and the stubborn ember of hope that refused to die. His voice, roughened by years of solitude, revealed the burden of a man who had seen too much destruction and loss. As he spoke, his words wove together a tapestry of desolation and resilience, of nights spent under a merciless sky and the faint promise that through the darkest hours, one might still find a glimmer of redemption. In that moment, Elias allowed himself to be vulnerable, sharing fragments of his past in a soft confession that bridged the gap between two wounded souls. As the afternoon wore on and the heat of day began to soften into a languid warmth, an unsettling chill swept through the ranch. Juniper, pausing in her duties as she dusted a workbench, noticed a small folded paper lying on the porch steps. With careful curiosity, she retrieved it and unfolded the crisp, worn note. The words, scrawled in a hurried, jagged hand, sent a ripple of tension through the stillness of the ranch. The note demanded Elias's land, warning that consequences would be swift for any who dared defy the will of the notorious gang led by the ruthless Colvarn. The signature at the bottom was not that of Cole himself, but of another, a name that chilled Elias to the core. It was Harlan. The mysterious rider who had been seen lurking at the auction in Red Hollow was not a mere bystander. He was an old enemy of Elias, harboring deep-seated grudges from battles long past. Harlan's presence now loomed ominously over the ranch, his note a cryptic message that hinted at a vendetta rekindled and a threat that would not be easily dismissed. Elias's jaw tightened as he read the words slowly, each line etching under his skin like a scar. He passed the note to Juniper, and for a long moment, the two exchanged a look heavy with unspoken fears and grim determination. The danger was real, and the fragile sanctuary they were building was suddenly under siege. Night began to fall as the horizon blushed with the colors of dusk. The ranch, once a quiet haven of solitude, now carried an undercurrent of impending conflict. The previously languid air seemed charged, as if the very land anticipated the storm of violence to come. Elias and Juniper hastily secured the buildings, their movements now marked by a new urgency. The firelight from inside the homestead cast long, trembling shadows across the porch, mingling with the foreboding shapes of the darkening plains. As they worked, a sharp-eyed ranch hand pointed toward the distant line of the horizon where the dust seemed to rise in unnatural plumes. There, looming against the fading light, was the unmistakable formation of Cole Varn's gang riding hard across the plain. The sight was like a harbinger of doom, the silhouettes of hardened outlaws stretching ominously, their presence a stark promise of violence. The duo's hearts pounded in unison, their shared whispers barely audible over the rising wind. Elias's face grew somber as he considered the cost of the threats now encroaching upon their lives. The note, signed by Harlan, had awakened old ghosts and new fears alike. In that dismal moment, he murmured to himself, "The past is a relentless shadow, always waiting at the edges of our present." Juniper, though silent, nodded in acknowledgement. The locket hidden against her heart felt heavier now, a reminder of a lost youth and a promise of resilience. As dusk deepened into night, the wind howled through the broken planks of the barn and across the barren fields, carrying with it the distant, menacing cadence of hooves pounding against the hard earth. The threat was imminent, and the fragile peace of the day was shattered by the echo of impending danger. At the very edge of the gathering darkness, as the last vestiges of sunlight surrendered to nightfall, the approaching figures became unmistakably clear. Cole Varn's gang, a ragged band of desperados hardened by cruelty and greed, advanced in a line, a moving wall of menace cutting through the dusky horizon. Their presence was a dark omen, and the shadows elongated across the plains like the outstretched claws of fate. The ranch, once a quiet bastion of renewal, now braced itself for the onset of a storm that promised to unleash old vendettas and new wounds alike. In that heart-stopping moment, with every sound amplified by the desert's desolation, Elias and Juniper stood together on the porch, their gazes fixed on the advancing figures. The silence between them was thick with determination and fear, and in that moment, both understood that their lives were about to change forever. With the approaching gang's silhouettes growing ever larger in the twilight, the ranch fell into a breathless stillness. The wind's mournful cry, the scent of dust settling on faded wood, and the flicker of firelight against marred faces all foretold the coming clash. As the first riders of Cole Varn's gang came into view, their outlines dark and menacing against the dusk, the air grew palpably cold with dread. The fate of Elias's sanctuary and the fragile hope they had kindled now hung in the balance, trembling like a candle flame in the desert night. The stage was set, and the coming confrontation would test the resilience of two intertwined souls against the cruelty of their relentless past. And so, as darkness swallowed the last light of day, the ominous figures of Cole Varn's gang advanced, their shadows stretching long and dreadful over the barren landscape, a silent, powerful promise that the battle for survival was about to begin. Night had fallen over Elias Kane's neglected ranch, and the vast plains were bathed in cold starlight. The silence that usually reigned over the decaying buildings was suddenly shattered by the distant rumble of approaching hoofs. Under a sky where stars glinted like shards of broken glass, the ranch's battered barns and crooked fences stood as solemn witnesses to years of hardship. The air was heavy with the scent of dust and old wood, and an eerie quiet pervaded as if nature itself awaited what was to come. In the darkness, silhouettes moved with deliberate menace, and the sound of galloping horses grew steadily louder. Amid the flicker of a broken lantern and the moan of the wind, the unmistakable clatter of Cole Varn's gang reached the ranch's boundary. The air, once still and expectant, now trembled with the promise of violence. Every heartbeat echoed against the vast emptiness, and the cold, biting night seemed to whisper forewarnings of the chaos about to unfold. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test every ounce of courage and resolve, as fate prepared to thrust the wounded souls of Elias and Juniper into the heart of darkness and unforgiving silence. Without warning, the calm of the night was shattered by the thunderous gallop of enemies. Cole Varn's gang descended upon the ranch as if summoned by darkness itself. The sound of hooves punctuated the quiet, and the first shots rang out, echoing over the barren landscape. Amid the chaos, Juniper sprang into action. Her eyes, once somber and distant, now burned with resolve. She quickly gathered the ranch hands, urging them to man the improvised defenses with swift, precise commands. "Everyone, take your positions. We must protect what is ours," she shouted, her voice a clarion call that cut through the mounting panic. With remarkable composure, she directed a plan to unleash the cattle from the pen, knowing the stampede could serve as a natural barricade against the invaders. Ranch hands scrambled to unlock barriers and open gates, releasing a herd that thundered across the plain, trampling enemy riders in their path. Amidst the chaos of clashing steel and ricocheting bullets, Juniper moved like a force of nature, her every command echoing her newfound leadership. In that desperate hour, as gunfire cracked the silence, she declared with fierce determination, "In the chaos of battle, I found the courage to fight for my future." In the ensuing battle, chaos reigned as the invaders pressed closer under the cover of darkness. The air was filled with the rapid staccato of gunfire and the roar of horses' hooves. Amid the melee, Juniper's strategy became evident. With a firm shout, she ordered the ranch hands to release the penned cattle by opening heavy wooden gates, triggering an unexpected stampede. The stampede tore through the ranks of Cole Varn's gang, sending enemy riders scattering in disarray. Amid the confusion, makeshift barricades were set with sharpened spurs, and the thundering cattle created a living wall that disrupted the hostile advance. Bullets whizzed past as Juniper directed her men with a cool head, her commands slicing through the clamor with purpose. The staccato rhythm of distant drums and clanging metal blended with the bellowing of betrayed cattle, creating an auditory tapestry of resistance and defiance. Within moments, many of the invaders found themselves trampled under the unexpected force of nature, harnessed by Juniper's quick thinking. The emotions in the air shifted subtly from despair to a flicker of hope as the tide of combat began to turn in favor of the defenders. Elias, ever the stoic guardian with scars that whispered of long-forgotten wars, advanced into the fray alongside Juniper. With steady precision, he reloaded his rifle, its barrel catching stray beams of starlight as if winking at fate. Every shot he fired carried the weight of a lifetime spent in bitter isolation and silent resolve. As bullets sliced the air, Elias moved with calculated bravery, covering Juniper's flank and dispatching foes with grim determination. Together, they formed an unlikely alliance, a wounded soul and a once-forgotten woman, now forged into fighters by circumstance. Amid the cacophony of gunfire and the roar of stampeding cattle, Elias's presence lent strength to every desperate maneuver. His calm, measured pace allowed him to anticipate enemy moves, while Juniper's agile strategy disrupted the attackers' ranks. They communicated wordlessly, their actions speaking of trust and a shared desire for survival. In that desperate hour, every shot, every command, and every heartbeat resonated with the promise of redemption. And as the night grew darker, their united front became a beacon of defiance against voices of tyranny and betrayal, heralding a new era in the face of overwhelming odds. In the midst of the fray, as the chaotic ballet of battle unfolded around her, Juniper's attentive ears caught a fragment of conversation from one of Cole Varn's rough-cut men. Huddled near a shattered cart, the outlaw muttered under his breath, "Amos will not be denied. He rides with us to claim what's rightfully his." The name, familiar yet unwelcome, struck Juniper like a bolt of lightning. A chill coursed through her veins as she recalled the painful memories of a husband once thought lost to betrayal, a man she had once believed to be a mere shadow in her past. The mention of Amos rekindled both bitterness and fear. How could the man responsible for her so-called demise be alive, and now working with Cole Varn against her? The revelation stoked the fires of anger within her, igniting a determination to confront her past head-on. Her heart pounded fiercely as she exchanged a glance with Elias, whose eyes darkened with a mix of sympathy and resolve. Though the battle raged on around them, a more personal war had been waged inside her, as she vowed silently that she would not be a pawn in anyone's game, not even in the ruthless schemes of old lovers turned traitors. After the chaotic clash, Cole Varn's gang slowly retreated, their ranks broken by the stampeding cattle and determined defense. The echo of hooves faded into the night, leaving behind an acrid scent of gunpowder and scattered debris. Elias surveyed the damage with a heavy heart, his eyes meeting Juniper's in silent acknowledgement. In the hushed aftermath, Juniper reached for the locket she had found earlier. With trembling hands, she reopened it and discovered a small hidden compartment. Inside lay a folded, yellowed letter. She unfolded the paper slowly and read the words that chilled her. Her husband, Amos, the very man she had once believed lost, was alive and had allied with Cole Varn to reclaim her, not out of love, but for his own bitter revenge. His detailed plan, outlined through fragile lines, promised further treachery and a return of past horrors. Shock and anger welled within her as the weight of betrayal pressed down on her. The revelation was more than a heartbreak. It was a call to arms against a past she had long tried to forget. As the night deepened, Juniper clutched the letter tightly, and the quiet before a new storm seemed to echo a grim warning that her true battle was only just beginning. The storm had gathered over Elias Kane's ranch, turning the neglected estate into a tumult of swirling winds, dark clouds, and ominous tension. Under a sky heavy with thunder that rumbled across the barren plains, the dilapidated buildings and broken fences appeared almost spectral in the half-light of dusk. On the creaking porch of the main house, Elias and Juniper sat close together beneath a threadbare awning, their faces lit by flickering lantern light and the occasional flash of lightning. It was in this charged atmosphere that Juniper finally found the strength to speak of her painful past. With eyes downcast and hands trembling slightly, she confessed the secrets long buried in the corners of her memory, the hardships of the orphanage where she had grown up and the cruelty of abandonment. Her voice, soft yet resolute, revealed not only the scars of neglect, but also the resilience that had carried her through years of solitude. "I used to believe that I was destined to be forgotten," she whispered, her tone barely audible over the patter of rain beginning to fall. "But in the shadow of my past, I found the strength to rise." As her words lingered between them, Elias's steely gaze softened, and he reached out to gently clasp her hand, a silent promise that she would no longer face these demons alone. In that raw moment of vulnerability, Juniper continued as she unfolded the contents of the yellowed letter hidden in her locket. The paper, fragile as old hopes, detailed the sinister plan of her long-believed dead husband, Amos. It revealed that he was not only alive, but now allied with Cole Varn's ruthless gang. Amos's plan was as bitter as it was vindictive. He intended to burn down the ranch, using fire as a means to force her back into submission, to reclaim her as his property through sheer terror. The revelation sent shocks through Juniper's very soul, mingling her grief with a burning fury. Tears, glistening like dew in the faint light, traced paths down her cheeks, but her expression rapidly solidified into one of fierce determination. "He thinks that by reducing everything to ashes I'll be broken," she said, her voice rising slightly with defiance. "But what he fails to see is that from these very flames, a new self can be born." Elias listened intently, his weathered face etched with both regret and resolve as he absorbed the weight of her words. The shared confession deepened the bond between them, forging a mutual understanding built on scars and a relentless pursuit of hope. With the bitter truth now laid bare, Elias and Juniper knew that desperate times demanded decisive action. Together, they convened a meeting of the ranch hands in the dim glow of the main house's parlor. The atmosphere was charged with urgency as Elias outlined a defensive strategy. He explained that the threat was no longer a distant rumor, but a tangible, oncoming storm summoned by Amos's treachery and Cole Varn's brutal ambition. The ranch hands, men and women hardened by the frontier's unforgiving nature, listened with solemn faces. Elias spoke with quiet authority, his words measured and deliberate. "We must hold our ground, for this land is more than soil. It is our refuge and our future." Juniper, her eyes now alight with a commanding inner strength, stepped forward to outline her own ideas. She demonstrated how they could reinforce the barn's weak points, set clever traps using the surrounding cattle pens, and utilize the terrain to their advantage. Commanding and resolute, she led rifle drills and small unit maneuvers under the ghostly shimmer of starlight. The plan was intricate and fraught with risk, but was imbued with the determination of every soul present to end the impending terror. As the men murmured their assent and readied their weapons, a sense of unity spread amongst them, a union of the battered and the brave under the looming threat of vengeance. Meanwhile, the hostile forces were not idle. Far on the dark, stormy horizon, Cole Varn's gang regrouped and refined their assault plans. Harlan, the enigmatic enemy from Elias's past who had already sown terror with his cryptic note, rode ahead as a scout. His dark eyes swept over the ranch with calculated precision, searching for vulnerabilities. His presence was as silent as a specter, and his every movement served as a reminder that the enemy was ever present. It was during this uneasy lull between the planning and the imminent rush of combat that one of Harlan's own men was spotted skulking near the vineyard, a spy sent to gauge the ranch's defenses. The ranch hand who discovered him shouted a warning, and soon Elias's lookout positions verified the intruder's presence. The news spread quickly among the defenders. The spy's presence was no isolated incident, but a harbinger of Amos's imminent arrival, further intensifying the already fraught night. The realization that the vindictive Amos was on his way to complete his cruel designs filled the air with a fresh layer of tension and dread. Every heart pounded faster, every whispered plan more urgent, as the team braced for the next phase of the inevitable assault. Under the tumultuous sky, rain began to fall in heavy, driving sheets, drenching the parched earth and adding to the chaos of the night. Elias, Juniper, and the assembled ranch hands huddled together beneath makeshift shelters, clutching their rifles and sharpening their resolve. As the storm raged outside, Juniper walked among them, offering encouragement and practical instructions in equal measure. Her leadership had grown from a fragile ember into a blazing flame of determination, and now her presence was the calm at the center of the storm. "Remember," she said, her voice resonant amid the clamor of distant thunder, "we fight not just to defend these walls, but our very right to choose our destiny. We are more than the past that haunts us." Her words bolstered their spirits, and even as fear flickered in many eyes, a quiet resolve took root. Elias, standing a few paces behind her, nodded silently in agreement. He understood that this moment was not merely about survival, but about reclaiming the honor and future that had been so ruthlessly stolen from them. The hours dragged on under the oppressive weight of the storm, every minute stretching in anticipation of the enemy's next move. The defensive preparations reached their zenith as every possible escape route was barred and every trap carefully set. In hushed tones, plans were whispered and strategies rechecked under the intermittent glow of lanterns that cast long, wavering shadows against the ranch's time-worn walls. Amid this deliberate chaos, a cold realization began to set in. They were facing not only the bloodthirsty aggression of Cole Varn's gang and the specter of Amos's vile revenge, but also the lingering malice of Harlan's hidden machinations. The somber faces of those around them reflected that collective understanding, each person aware that the coming battle would test every ounce of spirit and courage they possessed. Then, as if marking the arrival of fate's final hand in the hour, a piercing cry split the night, a blood-curdling alarm from one of the lookout posts. In the distance, near the weakened barn that had been their primary stronghold, flames began to lick the edges of the structure. A sudden, fierce blaze erupted as the fire caught on charred wood warmed by the storm, sending thick plumes of black smoke curling into the turbulent sky. The sight was both mesmerizing and terrifying. Flames danced in wild abandon, illuminated by the intermittent glare of lightning, as if proclaiming the start of an unholy assault. In that frozen moment of horror, Elias's steely composure gave way to grim determination, and Juniper's eyes blazed with righteous anger. The fire was no mere accident. It was the first salvo of an enemy determined to reduce their sanctuary to ashes, a signal that Cole Varn's final assault had begun. As the flickering light revealed the outlines of approaching figures silhouetted against the inferno, a chill ran down the spines of all assembled. Every second seemed to stretch into eternity as the sounds of crackling fire mingled with the distant echo of pounding hooves and drawn steel. The ranch, already battered by the elements and previous skirmishes, now teetered on the brink of catastrophe. Elias clenched his jaw, and Juniper, standing at the forefront of their defensive line, met his gaze with unyielding resolve. The night had turned into a battleground not only for their very lives, but for the promise of reclaiming freedom and forging a future free from the chains of betrayal. Amid the chaos of falling rain, raging fire, and the imminent sound of enemy reinforcements, a terrible question loomed. Could they hold back the tide of destruction that threatened to engulf them all? With the flames roaring near the barn and the storm obscuring the already tenuous boundary between friend and foe, their fate now hung in the balance. Every heartbeat, every drawn breath, was consumed by the realization that the final confrontation was upon them, and that somewhere, lurking in the tempest, Amos's vengeful pursuit was gathering strength. In that desperate moment, as the inferno grew and thunder boomed overhead, Elias and Juniper braced themselves for what was to come, their souls steeled by shared pain and defiant hope. The battle was not over. It had merely entered a more dangerous phase. As the fire intensified and dark silhouettes moved in the distance, signaling the arrival of the next wave of attack, the ranch's defenders readied themselves for the storm's full fury. And in the midst of the encroaching chaos, as sparks flew into the rain-soaked night, a single, fateful glimmer of terror and determination shone through, leaving them suspended in a moment of grim anticipation, wondering if this conflagration would be the ultimate end or the spark that would ignite their true redemption. Under the furious assault of a stormy night, Elias Kane's ranch trembled under the weight of rain and roaring thunder. The aged buildings, scarred by previous battles and neglect, shuddered as if aware that this night would be unlike any before. Flames still danced along broken wood and shattered glass from earlier skirmishes, casting erratic shadows against the dirt roads and barren fields. Amid the pervasive chill and relentless downpour, the defenders of the ranch prepared their last stand with quiet determination. Elias, his face stoic but marked by the pain of countless past wounds, inspected every barricade and watchtower, ensuring that each trap they had painstakingly prepared would function to their advantage. Juniper moved among the ranch hands, her voice low yet commanding, instructing them to hold positions and double-check their defenses. Every man and woman present felt the heavy burden of betrayal and loss, knowing that the coming attack was driven by vengeance and greed. The air was thick with anticipation, each heartbeat heavy with the realization that survival depended on their ability to outwit the enemy and stand united against the impending chaos. In this relentless night, every soul at the ranch braced for the storm to come. At the break of chaos, Cole Varn's gang launched their final assault. Amid the howling rain and roaring wind, enemy riders emerged from the darkness, their silhouettes stark and menacing against the flickering light of the burning barn. Harlan, the old adversary of Elias, led the vanguard with a cold precision that sent shivers down the defenders' spines. Gunfire erupted like violent sparks in the storm, and the sound of clashing steel merged with the thunder. The ranch hands, emboldened by Juniper's clear commands, sprang into action. They manned their positions, firing steady volleys from behind hastily reinforced barricades. Juniper, standing at the forefront, orchestrated the defense with remarkable composure. She signaled to release the preset traps, a series of weighted ropes and hidden caltrops that crisscrossed the approach. As a herd of cattle, roused from their pens, thundered forward, enemy riders were thrown into disarray. The chaos was palpable, the fury of battle merging with the relentless storm, as structures trembled under the onslaught and fierce determination radiated from every heart defending the ranch. Amid the tumult, every soul fought not only for survival, but for a reclaimed freedom from past betrayals. In the midst of the chaos, as the traps took their toll on the advancing gang, a sudden, shrill cry rang out over the storm. Juniper's heart pounded as she realized that amid the turmoil, a lone rider had broken through the enemy ranks. It was Amos, her long-forgotten husband, whose voice carried a mixture of vindictive glee and cruel determination. His eyes burned with a familiar, twisted fervor as he rode up to the front lines, flanked by two rough-looking men. Juniper's breath hitched with shock and fury, each beat of her heart a reminder of the betrayal she had endured. Without hesitation, she strode forward, her eyes hard and unyielding, ready to confront the man who had once claimed her. The air seemed to still as she faced him, rain mingling with her tears and determination. "I will not be your possession, Amos," she declared, her voice rising over the clash of battle. In that moment, as their eyes locked across the rain-soaked field, the past and present collided in a desperate confrontation that promised to reshape the future of all present at the ranch. With Amos now confronting her, Juniper's decisive act shattered any remnants of his power. As gunfire continued to split the stormy night, she deftly maneuvered into a position that would force him to expose himself. With a swift motion, she drew her revolver and, amid the chaos, fired a single, well-aimed shot. The bullet struck a vital part of Amos's arm, sending him reeling in pain and disbelief. Shouts and cries echoed as Cole Varn's gang faltered, their morale crumbling at the sight of their leader's apparent failure to control him. Elias, who had fought valiantly alongside Juniper, seized the moment to rally the defenders further. He barked orders, coordinating a series of traps that ensnared the enemy riders, forcing them into a disorganized retreat. The well-placed caltrops and the thundering stampede of cattle contributed to a ballet of chaos that left the enemy scattered and disoriented. Harlan, watching from his precarious vantage, realized that his dark designs had unraveled. As the relentless assault subsided, the combined force of the ranch hands and the clever stratagems began to turn the tide decisively. In that moment, As the rain washed away the blood and sweat of battle, victory seemed within reach. As the final echoes of battle faded into the stormy night, a profound silence settled over the ravaged ranch. The remnants of Cole Varn's gang lay scattered, their assault thwarted by the ingenuity and unity of Elias, Juniper, and their steadfast defenders. In the aftermath, amidst broken structures and smoldering embers, Juniper took a moment to reflect on the profound transformation that had taken place. The harsh whispers of the past, once filled with betrayal and despair, were gradually being replaced by a resolute determination and hope. Elias helped patch the gaping wounds in the ranch's walls, while Juniper gathered the scattered fragments of shattered dreams to create a new foundation for the future. Together, they tended to the injured and salvaged what remained of the home that had nearly been lost to fire and fury. As the storm abated and dawn approached, the first tentative rays of sunlight pierced through the dissipating clouds. The promise of a new day shimmered on the horizon, heralding the arrival of spring. Fresh crops were planted, and the damaged barn received careful repairs, symbolizing the beginning of renewal and growth. From the ashes of betrayal, we built a future worth fighting for. Days turned into weeks, and as winter reluctantly gave way to a hopeful spring, the ranch underwent its own quiet resurrection. Elias and Juniper, now partners both in love and in survival, worked side by side, repairing every splintered board and weaving new dreams into the fabric of their home. The once barren fields began to awaken beneath the gentle caress of spring sunlight. Fresh crops emerged from the fertile soil, and the repaired barn stood proudly as a testament to resilience. Community members, drawn by the tale of triumph over betrayal, came to lend their hands and hearts. Together, they rebuilt bridges that had long been broken, filling the ranch with laughter, hard-won joy, and the soft rustle of hopeful voices. Every stroke of a hammer and every seed planted carried the promise of a brighter tomorrow. With a deep, satisfied sigh, Elias looked out over the rejuvenated land and said, "From the ashes of betrayal, we built a future worth fighting for." In that moment, as dawn broke with radiant clarity, Juniper felt an inner liberation, a final farewell to the chains of her past. If this tale of resilience inspired you, subscribe for more Wild West stories. Their hearts, now united against all odds, embrace the promise of a new dawn in the untamed frontier.